Hi, everybody. I'm Frank Gladstone. I'm the Executive Director of Asifa-Hollywood. We're here for another webinar with creators of Jungle Beat, the new animated Jungle Beat, the movie. Jungle Beat was a television show before, and I'm going to introduce you to our panel here today. And I'm going to start with Rita because her last name is the hardest one to pronounce. So I'm going to, Rita was the producer of the show, right, Rita?
That's correct. Yep, with Tim.
Rita Mbanga.
You nailed it, Frank.
And then Tim Keller, who was also producer. Tim, there you go. So I guess you're a co-producer. I'm going to leave you for the end because you're in trouble. And Brent Dawes, who was the director and writer of the show, and also of the TV series, I think, as well, right, Brent? Yeah. And then Phil Cunningham, who is actually a chicken ranch farmer, but somehow, which is kind of true, but it somehow is the head of the studio and the executive producer of the movie as well. And the studio is called Sunrise Productions. Is that right, Phil?
Yeah, the studio is called Sunrise Productions, and the partner studio, the collaborator, was Sandcastle Studios in Mauritius. So the South African studio is called Sunrise, and then the Mauritian one was Sandcastle Studios.
And Mauritius, for those of us who are bad at geography, is where?
Brent and Rita, I'll let you answer, seeing as you lived on the island during the movie.
Yeah, it's in the Indian Ocean. So it's about 4 hours. Looking at the world map, it's about 4 hours to the right of South Africa, halfway to Australia.
The east, yeah, it's the east coast, of Africa to the east.
Is it a large population there?
No, it's about 1.3 million people, and.
But a really interesting statistic I heard when we lived there was that there's 1.3 million people that live there, but at any given time during the year, there's almost an equal amount of tourists on the island.
Oh, that's that's very interesting. When I was a kid, I lived in Miami, Florida, and it was a medium-sized town, but in the winter, because it was warm, in the winter it doubled in size. So I guess it's something like that. And that's pretty interesting. Now, Sunrise is in Johannesburg, is that right?
No, definitely not. In Cape Town.
Where?
This fragment of Sunrise is in Joburg.
So Cape Town City, which is on the southern tip of South Africa, right on the coast.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. And I'm going to ask to go back a little bit. Having an animation studio in South Africa is kind of interesting. I know the story, and the reason I do is because I saw your first movie, the Junkmation picture, The Legend of Sky Kingdom, years ago when I was working at a studio here, because I think you guys sent it to us thinking maybe the studio I was working for would pick it up as an indie. It didn't happen, but I did see it, and I was very interested in how it started. So I'm going to ask you veterans who've been there for a while to tell me, how did the studio get started?
So I'll tell you the way it started. It was actually in Zimbabwe at the time. And I could say it started on the Zambezi River because from my point of view, it started with a love of storytelling. And there was a place you could canoe in the Zambezi River for 4 nights, 5 days. You wouldn't see a human being. It was just beautiful out there. And I think that's where it grew my love of story and adventure. And decided that one thing I wanted to do was to get into movie making, and animation crosses race, cultural, and age barriers better than any other medium. And you can just let your imagination go wild with animation. So it was birthed there. And then we started to get mad people who were up for risk around us. So Brent, for example, on Legend of the Sky Kingdom, started out, he shaved his head and he said he wouldn't cut it again until the movie was finished, which was, by the time we got to the end of the movie, he looked like Samson, I think.
Now, and I know this, you raised the money to do the first picture, which was a stop motion picture. Right, and Junkmation was named that because all the characters were made out of found objects. Well, we were trash, clothespins and wire and spools and all kinds of stuff that people would throw away. It's pretty interesting. But how did you raise the money in order to, the small amount of money you still, comparatively speaking, needed to do it?
Yeah, as you said, it goes back to your chicken farming story, which has actually got a lot of truth to it. And so basically, I'd started an agricultural business, and the core of that was chickens, and we were funding it out of that agricultural business. But going to the art form, it was really amazing, because along the streets of Zimbabwe, you'd see this beautiful art form of people making characters out of junk, wire, copper. And so that was the inspiration for that movie, artistically, was from the street art, actually, in Zimbabwe.
And you did manage to get the film finished. I think the first animated film out of Africa, animated feature film out of Africa, I believe.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And then what? And then I was not surprised a few years later to find out that there was still a studio in South Africa, and I was not surprised at that point to find out it was probably you guys. But by that time, you had transitioned from stop frame to CG, correct?
To CG, correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And what did you guys do? So what was the next project?
So I'll let Brent tell the story, but I'll just say why we moved across to CG. Because for me, CG...
Because my knees and my back were too sore after stop motion animation.
Yeah, I think so. No, we thought with CG animation, like your imagination can go anywhere. With stop frame, it's a beautiful format. It's got its challenges in terms of its limitations, where CG, anything you can imagine, you can do. So I put out a challenge to Brent, which I'll let him tell you about. And then that's how the CG Jungle Beat started, actually, with this little test. But Brent, maybe you tell about how
Yeah, so having done one stop motion feature cured us of the desire to ever do that again. But we still wanted to tell stories, and we wanted to tell them on a bigger scale. And Phil was really inspired by Finding Nemo, Ice Age, the CG movies that were coming out at that time. And so he said, Brent, let's try and make something in CG. And we were going to try and make, we just made a feature film. Let's go try and make another feature film. But we thought, well, let's just see if we can actually do this thing called CG, before we head down that road. So I wrote a little test animation, and I didn't know too much about CG at the time. I knew enough to know that fur was hard and water was difficult, and the effects and what have you, because this was, a good 15 years ago, when the industry was still very young. So I was like, what's furry? A monkey. And I was like, what if a monkey wakes up and he's got smoke coming out of his mouth because it's snowed all around? And I just kind of wrote this little story that through a whole bunch of CG challenges at these two animators that we found. And so I threw in mud and fur and rain. So it's basically a story of the monkey against the weather. And that was all it was ever meant to be, was that little test. And the test proved successful in that it was like, hey, we can actually do this. It's looking great. Let's keep going. And sort of to jump ahead slightly, it went to a few festivals, people really liked it, and a distributor saw it and was like, hey, I really like this. Do you have more of these? And Phil, being the quick on his feet thinker that he is, he's like, of course, yeah, we're definitely planning on doing more. And he phoned me, he's like, Brent, I'm meeting this guy tomorrow. I need more ideas. I'm having a meeting tomorrow. I need more ideas about what the series is going to be. So I had to rattle off all these other ideas. And that's how Jungle Beat was born, actually.
Now, Jungle Beat is a series that is shown on in a lot of countries. It has the series, the TV series, which is actually two. There's a longer series, and then there's the Jungle Beat Explorers, which is a shorter series, right? Do I have that right?
Yeah,
correct.
There's no talking in it, which is really brilliant. I know Aardman also did a series with no talking, but so that's really easy to market, right, producers?
Yeah.
Because you don't have to worry about when you market it to countries that don't speak English, for instance. There's no worries about it because you don't have to dub anything or subtitle. But in this picture, in fact, the first beat of this movie is giving the animals voices, I guess, to explain for your Jungle Beat fans why they are allowed to talk. So what was the decision there? I'm going to go to the producers to ask about that. Why was that the first note? Was that the first note? The first thing you had to do was cast the characters now that it had been written that they would talk.
Well, I mean, I'll share from my perspective, but I think ultimately what I love about it is that it wasn't just us suddenly making our characters speak for the sake of a feature. That it's intrinsically motivated by the story that Brent wanted to tell. But I think we realized as we approached the feature film that 80, 90 minutes of a non-dialogue feature, that's a long way. And you're right, Aardman actually tackled this beautifully with Shaun the Sheep, their feature. But we felt that we wanted to do something with dialogue, and we were excited to give these characters their voice and hear what they sounded like. And that was really, I know, important for Brent, is that as we cast and as we brought their voices to life, that they still felt like Monkey, like Trunk, and that their true character was coming through. And that posed some really interesting casting challenges for us, because it needed to feel like them. And of course, Brent has voiced Monkey in the TV series for the last 10, 15 years. So he's certainly very close to the character. You got fired, yeah. Brent. I'm sorry.
I got fired for the feature film.
Yeah, well, I think that's interesting. And it also provides us kind of an interesting issue, because up until this point, the characters didn't have to talk, and now they had dialogue. And when you deliver dialogue, it's a little bit different acting than when you don't. When you're pantomiming, and you have to be maybe a little broader in getting your things across than when you can actually say something or repeat a thought. So was there challenges there for your animation crew to suddenly do dialogue?
Can I just jump in here? Because I shared an office with Brent in Mauritius when he was giving his notes and his briefs on the characters and them talking. And it was wonderful fun for me, because he is a very physical kind of actor himself. And so watching him kind of give notes and comments and direction on the animals talking was hugely amusing and so much fun.
That's great. We have some people on who are attending, and I'm going to invite them to, if they have a question, to just go into their chat and type the question in. We'll ask questions, so they'll probably start doing that now. I did also notice that in watching the show that you had, well, first of all, there's a little bit of ET involved here. The character wants to go home, and he's got a heart. So was that an inspiration, Brent, for your script?
No, interestingly, and I read a review of the movie a few days ago, and someone said, "Oh, there's strong tones of E.T." I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess. Oh yes, he's an alien who wants to go home." It all led from your earlier question about the characters talking. It was so important to me that there was a story reason that they talked, and so then I went from so the characters can talk. Why can the characters talk? And I was like, well. And I went through a few things. It could be an alien. It could be a scientist who's created this thing. Is it a Dr. Dolittle type thing? And I ultimately went with the alien. And I was like, okay, well, what is this alien doing here? Why is he here? And I was like, well, maybe he's visiting. He's on holiday. He's crash landed. So just going through all sorts of things. And I think I came to he has crash landed, but he's been sent on a mission. But actually, what's more important to him is to go home. And so it wasn't based on E.T., but I can see why you asked the question.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't exactly E.T. because E.T. doesn't have a dad who's coming. I don't want to, if anybody who hasn't seen it yet who might be on, I don't want to give away anything, but there's a dad in it. And he's kind of the villain. And so that, of course, that's completely different than E.T. But I did notice at the beginning that, oh yeah, and then he had the little heart glow when he gets, when he starts to have emotions and things like that. I don't want to give away too much more than the thing, but in the plot, but I did do that. Now, in casting the voices, I want to get back to that a little bit. In casting the voices, are all your actors local? Or I know some of them probably are, but or did you grab people from other places as well and cast and either audition them online or actually bring them out to South Africa or what?
Tim or Rita maybe answer that one. Yeah.
So mostly actually based in the UK. Some South Africans, 1 or 2 Zimbabweans. So even, like Monkey was an American, but based in the UK. Right. But we recorded most of them in South Africa and London.
So you did voice recording in both places, yeah.
We did. Yeah.
And the guy who plays the hedgehog, he sounds like he's from New York, but I don't think he is. I think that was his his New York, Brooklyn voice thing. That was pretty funny. Like, why did they have a New Yorker in here? So it was pretty good. It was pretty good. So I looked him up to make sure he wasn't. So I happen to know. Anyway, well, I'm going to ask in a little. I have another question here. Let me take a look here. So, are there other studios now that you're working? Now, the studio in let me get the question. Mauritius right now. It's an odd place to have an animation studio. Where are you recruiting the talent from who understand how to use CG and all of that kind of stuff? Where are you getting your talent? Or are you training the people who work on this yourselves?
So from the Mauritian point of view, a lot of those were actually a collaboration with Sunrise, with the South African studio. So a lot of those guys went across from South Africa to Mauritius. But also what's amazing is we talk about the global village. And on our next project, for example, it's amazing how, and with what's happening in COVID, it's just accelerating this remote work. So we're really trying to work with the best talent in the US, Spain, Asia. So actually trying to collaborate around the world. But the core of the team that went to Mauritius were South African. Because there was no formal or set up industry yet in Mauritius. So everyone had to kind of be relocated there to start growing the industry there. So it's very new in Mauritius, and it's going to be a journey of crawl, walk, run, because growing an animation studio, as we know, it takes time. An animation industry in any country takes time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it does. I am, and well, you've already kind of segued into another question here. Hold on a second. Yeah. You've got this feature now under your belt. It's gone out. It's at Annecy right now. In case anybody in the audience has an Annecy pass, has done that. I know we have members that have. You can watch the picture now if you haven't seen it on the stream we've provided or you guys have provided for us, which ends today. You can always go to Annecy and watch it. And then soon, when is the actual release date?
Friday.
Oh, that's kind of exciting, isn't it? And
yeah, so exciting.
Is it a worldwide release?
Well, we're calling it worldwide, but it's initially primarily the US and Europe and a lot of Asia. And then in July, a few countries from Europe, like Germany, will follow. South America's in July. But it's a big start on the 26th of June with a few territories following later. Yeah.
Now, your studio from everything that I've seen, including the very first picture and Onward, is all basically for family films that anybody can watch. You don't have to be 14 or 18 or anything. If you're 4, it's okay. And if you're 40, it's okay. And if you're 80, it's okay. It's okay. Are you going to continue that, or are you going to branch out into other pictures as well? Other kinds of, because there's a lot of animation now that isn't for little kids or isn't or only for little kids. So what are you thinking?
No, I think our passion is definitely to stay down that route. And as I was saying in the beginning, obviously from an animation point of view, firstly, love animation because of its reach. And we would really want to tell stories that are, like we know, stories are like Trojan horses. They can carry a message so beautifully. And so we would really like our stories to carry positive messages and stay focused on the family audience. I think that's our DNA, and that's what we love doing. So yeah, to stay down that route, definitely.
So now you are, and you've already hinted around of the next project. And I see the producers smiling like something's.
Yeah.
And I know there's something in the works, but is there another feature in the works or more TV? What's happening next?
So I'll tell you what's in the works for us. It's actually been I can't say what the film's about or what the title is, but it's our dream project. So something we've been building at for 20 years. So it's, from our point of view, a very it's an epic film. It's a daring film, and it's a much bigger budget than Jungle Beat. So it's a feature film, though, to answer your question. And it's and the scale of it's a lot bigger than Jungle Beat. So we've been trying to build from TV to a smaller feature film, and now try and go to a really big feature film. So it's super exciting and quite daunting is the wrong word. It's actually just a lot of fun. It's like a rodeo at the moment, though.
Yeah. Is it in development right now?
Yeah. So
Pre-production.
Pre-production. Yeah.
So this is kind of an interesting question. I know that when you're an independent, you're not connected to a big studio that's had huge budgets and so forth. You have to raise money. And I used to be, when I was working for DreamWorks and Disney and stuff, they would send me to places where the independent film studios were raising money. There's a thing called Cartoon Movie. I think it's still around.
Yeah.
Where you talk to the various countries and you get X amount of dollars for the release in that country and so forth. Is that how you're doing it? Or do you have private investors other than, don't give me secrets,
no.
But how are you're a small independent studio, kind of not in the mainstream geographical area. You're not in Europe, you're not in US, Canada. How are you, what's the procedure without going into any, I don't want any, secret business.
Yeah. We just got to sell a lot of eggs, Frank.
Yeah. Well, I know in the original one, it was eggs. Yeah. But.
Yeah. No, I think the one thing we've tried to do is play to our strengths. And so I guess coming from outside the industry initially, it's almost that thing of when the world zigs, try and zag. And so the way we've tried to raise money is kind of out of the box thinking. And we've tried to get partners on board who, if I can use the word from the saying from Lord of the Rings, certain death, little chance of success. What are we waiting for? That's what Gimli says. So we've tried to find people who believe in us and believe in the vision of what we're doing, but also have got an appetite for risk, because obviously being an independent animation studio, there's huge risk associated with, and not just getting the film made, but the distribution of the film. And so I think one of our things we worked at Frank hard over the last 20 years is building relationships, just genuinely building relationships. And then out of those relationships has come, partnerships and funding, but it's been a long journey and it hasn't been a quick thing, to be honest. It's been a long investment in relationship, really. Yeah.
And what do you guys think of the fact that now, in many countries, including US, there's really not a lot of theaters to go into. It's all online. Had you intended for a theatrical release as well and kind of wrote that off as some of the other pictures have done? And it's all, it's all on Netflix and Amazon Prime and wherever else, Disney Junior, wherever else it's going. Is that what you're thinking now, or had you intended it to only be online initially?
Rita, you grab that one, Rita or Tim?
Yeah, sure. So Frank, yes, we had a fairly traditional theatrical release strategy planned, and we were kind of going as wide as we could. We had a wonderful sales agent, kind of attached, and they were been doing pre-sales for the film to kind of big distributors for the last year and a half, at all the festivals. So we had a traditional plan in place, and then when COVID hit, in kind of early March into Feb, we were like, and all the theaters shut down. We were like, well, we have to, spin 180 degrees and come up with a new plan. And like Phil was saying, kind of our partners and investors are wonderfully courageous and we're just like, what do you need, to make it happen? And so we brought the release forward by 2 months and are going as wide as we can online. Which is where everyone is consuming masses of content these days. And the big challenge with that is making your voice as loud as possible. It's a super crowded marketplace. Yeah. And so we have wonderful partners in kind of an advertising agency called Hats and Rabbits, and working with Fumi, who's incredible. And just kind of trying to, get our voice kind of heard. And Annecy's been amazing as well, and it's been awesome to be a part of that festival. But it was a huge change, as far as date goes and platform goes. So we've learned a whole lot, but it's been really amazing and exciting, and really great that this is possible in this day and age, and that we didn't have to just kind of put it in a can and leave it on a shelf until theaters opened.
Right. Well,
I think
go ahead.
And I was going to say, Frank, it's such actually an exciting time for smaller studios, I think, because like when the music industry changed so fast, there's incredible opportunity when there's change. And this has also forced a lot of change, which has opened doors for us, which I don't think would have been there before as a smaller studio. Because if you've got that agility, you can move to respond quickly. So I think it's a really exciting time for small independent studios, because there's so many avenues opening up on how to distribute. And just to say the other way we went about it, we really try to collaborate with what we've called influencers, people who genuinely, obviously we had a commercial agreement with them, but people who we felt genuinely weren't just being paid to promote the movie, but genuinely loved it. They fitted the DNA of this particular movie. They had kids and so we try to really work hard to get a group of influencers to promote the movie as well. But I think it's actually for us been an exciting time to look at the industry.
And now you have the Oscars is taking, you know, you don't have to be in a theater this year in order to qualify. And actually the Annies, the award show that Asifa does, which is kind of worldwide now, we've had for 2 years, you don't have to have a theater. You can simply, so we're looking for you guys to submit in lots of categories.
Done.
A little commercial on our end of things. If I have one more here, yeah, we have time. The question is, they've noticed in the credit crawl at the end, it's much less people than they normally see in an animated feature. Less people worked on it because you're an indie, you know. And
there's a lot of double ups there.
And a lot of double ups, right? A lot of people doing more than one job. So now when you do your next picture, are you able to draw back on the people who, on the studio in the Mauritius, the Mauritius studio, and other people to help you out? Will you be able to get your crew back? And you've also talked about you're going to add people to the crew from other places.
Tim, I think you grabbed that one.
Definitely. Yeah. We've had the great benefit of being able to roll the entire crew from Jungle Beat the movie on to our next project. And so, you know, whereas we probably had in-house about 90 people towards the end of Jungle Beat, well, you know, we're now at 125 people and rapidly scaling up. We're going to hit about 240 within a year. And so we've really been able to take the learnings from Jungle Beat and roll them forward, which I think is really exciting. I think that the truth about indie feature film production is it is absolutely about wearing many hats and as Brent says, doubling up all over the place. And while we know that gives us an agility and an edge, we also know that as we scale up, it's important to bring people together and around us. And so we certainly will be crewing up for our upcoming features. But, you know, to the point about Mauritius, absolutely, that's part of our long-term strategy, as well as our other partners worldwide. I think we live in an incredible moment to produce films in this distributed way, where we can cover almost all 24 hours of the day and have production running almost full time. And you know, just 5 years ago that would be a challenge, whereas today it's easy. We completed the last 2 months on Jungle Beat with all of our crew working from home, finaling shots, delivering the picture. So it's an incredibly exciting time and a lot of opportunity.
I think that's a good place to end with an incredibly exciting time. I think you guys are right on it. So I appreciate very much that you found the time today at your dinner time and our breakfast time to come and be with us. And so I want to thank all of you, Brent, Phil, Rita, and Tim, and all of you who've watched today on our webinar. Thank you very much. And I'll see you guys. I'm looking forward to seeing your next picture as well, and maybe getting to talk with you before that happens as well. So
thanks so much.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much for having us, Frank.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.